Okay, hello and welcome to the video. My name is Wade Daniel Smith, and this video is about a rational concern. I'm not a criminal. I have no criminal record, by the way, but I've been falsely accused of a couple things and had to go to court over that a couple times, and I've had jury duty and some other things. Well, when you go to the courthouse, I live in Louisiana, so it's actually parishes, but I put county for people in other states to understand. But it's actually parishes in Louisiana. But when you go to the Amite Courthouse in Tangipahoa Parish, uh, so you walk through the front entrance, and there's a stand-up metal detector, and they got a guard right there looking at it. All right, so you walk through the metal detector, and it beeps, and oh, it's my keys. So you take your keys out and you set them down, and you walk through, and it beeps. Oh, it's my belt buckle. See, all right. Well, you take your belt off, and then you can go through. All right. Well, so anyway, they don't pat you down or anything. All right. So I'm a martial artist, so I'm thinking about this in terms of the history of martial arts and stuff. I'm like, all right, that's a mistake because I could have a non-metal weapon, and this dumbass didn't even check for that. All right. So I go on in the courthouse. I could have a wooden weapon or a plastic weapon, for example, just to let you know. All right. So I go on into the courthouse, and so he didn't pat me down, and the other guards in there didn't pat me down. I get into the courtroom, and the two bodyguards and the bailiff are each about 80 to 100 plus pounds overweight, at least. All right. And so I sit down, wherever I was supposed to sit down, because sometimes they have you alphabetized, and sometimes you can just sit down any order you want to. But I sat down in a certain place in the courtroom and waited for the time to the judge to happen. And by the way, one time I was up in there, the clerk actually illegally told everybody to plead guilty, that the judge was really hard on people. And I stood up and said, no. I said, that violates the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I said, never plead guilty to anything you didn't do. I said, you really shouldn't plead guilty at all because burden of proof is on the prosecutor, right? Never plead guilty to anything, in fact, because they're just going to screw you over. All right. But the very first thing that happened that one day is the clerk told everybody to go ahead and plead guilty because the judge was going to be hard on everybody anyway. And I immediately told everybody not to plead guilty to anything, that was unconstitutional for her to even say that. She should have got fired. All right. But anyway, that one day I was sitting in there, and like the two guards and the bailiff were each 85 to 100 plus pounds overweight, and I am not exaggerating. And I sat there, and I'm thinking, and I'm praying about it. I'm like, God, I know you see it, and I see it, and somebody in here has got to see it. What if a lunatic realizes that, that the guy at the metal detector did not pat anybody down, and the bailiff and the two other guards in the courtroom are so overweight that I could probably beat all three of them in a fight by myself, much less if a criminal came in here with a wooden dagger and wanted to murder the judge. None of the three would be able to stop him. I'm like, what do I do about this? I may as well tell somebody, so I'm telling you to. All right. They would not be, they're so overweight and out of shape, they would not be able to stop a common criminal with a wooden dagger from murdering the judge. And they didn't even check for that at the door. How stupid are people? All right, that's not a bodyguard. A 400-pound man is not a bodyguard just because he's a big guy. If I kick him in the belly, he's going to hit the deck or the nuts. Do you understand that? And only one of them had a gun that I know of because the other two didn't. I think they might have had batons or tasers or something. But I'm like, it is completely stupid. And it's not like the bailiff would have been able to shoot at somebody in the courtroom without accidentally hitting a bystander anyway. So why does he even have a gun? Because he could accidentally hit one of the officials in the courtroom or a bystander anyway if you tried shooting at somebody. And then the way they process criminal justice in courts makes no sense. For example, one day whenever I was in the court, which the charges against me were dropped because they checked the dash cam video of the cop, and he pulled me over, and I was completely the wrong car, and I told him that he had the wrong car, that it must have been somebody else. I was completely the wrong car on the completely the wrong side of the overpass that he originally saw the crime happen on. All right. And I told him that night to check the dash cam video, that I wanted to see the dash cam video. He's like, you'll get to see it in court. So whenever I go to court, the prosecutor threw the charges out because when they checked the dash cam video, my car wasn't even where he said it was. All right. But anyway, while I was there was a gentleman there that owed a fine of, I think, $500 for a previous crime. And because he failed to pay the $500 fine, the judge ordered him to be cuffed and locked up in the county prison for 30 days. And I'm like, you dumbass, it's going to cost you more than $500 to feed and clothe him for 30 days. So what was the freaking point? What was the point of putting him in prison over a $500 fine? All you had to do was garnish his wages. But you put him in prison, and it costs way more than $500 to keep somebody in prison for 30 days. It costs about $12,000 to keep one person in prison for 30 days. So what did that accomplish? That's how our criminal justice works in this country. But they let murderers and rapists out ahead of time on good behavior. See, that's wrong too. You don't get your punishment reduced for good behavior. Good behavior is the bare minimum standard of what does not get punished. All right? You see, all right, good behavior, there are 10 commandments in the law of God, right? The core law of God has 10 commandments. Those are not 10 suggestions. Those are commandments. You're supposed to obey those at all times, and you don't even get rewarded for obeying them. All right? That is the bare minimum standard of what goodness is. So you're not supposed to reward the criminal because he said a prayer and went to prayer meetings in prison. Anybody would do that to get out of prison ahead of time, dumbass. Do you understand me? But they let murderers and rapists out of prison in half of their sentence because of good behavior. No, they're not good behavior. I don't even believe murderers and rapists ever reform, much less ahead of time.